started.
So Andrew, talk about this. Not it's a wonderful movie. I hate to say that first of all, but it's a movie that
You can
needs to be
say it, it's
told.
okay.
It's a movie that needs to be told. I give it the four E's. It's emotional, it's educational, it's entertaining, and it's full of empathy. Because I didn't know about this, and I talk up to a lot of nurses and doctors cross country, especially in southern states. So when I saw something like this, I'm like, uh-oh, another thing I got to tell my friends in the South. Did you know about some of these things? What's going on with this? Talk about why you chose to do this movie, because it's a wonderful movie, but it needs to be spread out there.
Yeah. Well, I had done about 15 years ago, I made a film called Under Our Skin, and it was about the Lyme disease epidemic. And there's a very large community behind that issue. Um, and it really touched a chord with a lot of people. People who had been sort of like suffering in silence, who fall through the cracks of the medical system. And so somebody who had seen that came to me, and this is a mother of kids with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and came to me with this film idea. And their nonprofit gave some seed money to the film, and it was launched. That was how it was launched. And so for me, it's like if I won't just take on any film. This to me seemed important. These are the I's, not E's. Important and interesting. Um, I'm sure there's another I could throw in there, but it's not just a story that needs to be told, but something that is like if I as like a normal person, like I'm like, wow, like I had no idea. I can't believe this is happening. Um, I feel like that's the response of the viewer. And so I put myself in the place of the viewer, and it's like I want to get to the bottom of it. Um, and that's really what sort of instigated it.
So, for the record, I grew up in East Lyme, Connecticut. When I graduated in 1980, there was only two cases of Lyme disease. My sister had one. So I understand that, and I saw that documentary, and I'm still talking about it because now it's spread to the South, which is quite interesting. So when you do a movie like this, and you're going to interview these people, and you don't know how long you may have, how do you do that?
When you say you don't know how long you might have, what do you mean by that?
Because not to give away a lot in the movie,
Oh, okay.
things happen.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha. So, the issue that we're looking at is we're looking at young kids who have a complex invisible illness. So that there's a lot of illnesses that can be in that category, but we're specifically looking at Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disease. It affects all the systems of the body and has multi-symptoms. So they don't know what's going on, and their parents take them to doctor after doctor, and because it's so difficult to diagnose, and there's no genetic test for the most common form, which is hypermobile EDS. Um, they become accused of faking it, fictitious disorder, and then eventually, as you see in the film, very often the parents are accused. Usually it's the mother is accused of medical child abuse or Munchausen by proxy because they just can't believe it's happening. It's too complicated. Um, so, um, uh, but getting back to the illness, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, it's not always fatal. And there's one form that is usually fatal. That's called vascular EDS. But the most common form is not usually fatal. So, it's usually debilitating in a lifelong way. And then there's complications that come from that can make it more lethal, let's call it. So it's like I didn't expect the journey that I took as a filmmaker going into these families' lives. Like I didn't expect what happened to happen.
Yeah.
I honestly did not expect it. So it was yeah, all I can say is it's really difficult. It's because you get close to these individuals and their families, and and you also are witnessing an injustice, and you just keep thinking, if this was looked at and treated in a competent way, it wouldn't happen.
Talk about talking to some of the doctors, some of the people on the research, because they don't seem like they're all in unison. And that is interesting and fascinating to me. I could just imagine when you were doing research and talking to someone like Megan, what this was going through your head, but capturing it as that filmmaker.
Did you mean Morgan?
Morgan, yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Uh, yeah, well, in that way, it's sort of similar to Lyme disease because there's
Yeah.
not a consensus in the medical world about what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, and it's sort of like with Lyme disease. You say Lyme disease, and the doctor's eyes glaze over, and they're like, "Oh, it's one of these patients." It's kind of similar here. A lot of doctors have not been trained. They don't know. Like in the film, we say they've 5 minutes of study about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. There's just not much education about it. So, and so what they see children who have these bizarre symptoms that can't be tested for or diagnosed. They see parents who seem wacky because they're like taking their kids everywhere. They seem overly concerned and dramatic. And they're like, there's something wrong with this family. And the sad thing is sometimes there is. Sometimes there really is something wrong with the family or the mother or something's going on, that there really is medical child abuse. But that's in very, very small fraction of these cases.
Getting into film festivals, I know what it's like to pick movies and see them before people see them, and you want to get the word out for something like this. Getting into Slamdance, and I don't know if it was submitted to other film festivals. What was that like for you as that filmmaker? Because the process is much different from the last 8 years prior to when I started doing it in 2014 when I was picking for Hollywood Film Festival.
You're right. And I'd love to hear what you mean, how it's different. Like how do you think it's different? I'm so curious.
Well, I'm still finding these movies that people don't even know about, especially in Atlanta or when I'm in Nashville. I'm finding great films and they're choosing to go different directions. And I have a lot of independent filmmakers reach out to me around the world because I guess we rank up high on something. I don't know what it is. So my job is to always help them. And I always want to
Ah,
put them on our live shows.
yeah.
And then when I'm telling people, my old film critics, hey, have you seen this movie? No, where'd you see it? I saw it cross country, or I saw it in Chicago, or I saw it in New York. And they're like, well, why haven't we got it? I'm like, because you guys are stuck in one bubble. You're not venturing around. Well, like I am. And so I get access to a lot of things that people don't. So my job still, going back to 1993, when I first started doing movie reviews, is to help promote those films, get that word out there like this.
That's great. Yeah, I think what I've seen change is I'm not sure if there's a glut of films like that. This is more being made, but it's definitely more competitive than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also like the 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 themes of the films are, it's almost like there's like gatekeepers who are like,
Yeah,
this is okay, that's not okay. The sort of like the range of subjects that are deemed as sort of appropriate, is has really narrowed. So I don't know what to call that, whether you call it politically correct or what, but there's definitely been a narrowing. And if you don't fit within the sort of confines, then you you don't get funding or you don't get programmed. And so we'll see what happens with complicated. One of the things, everything is complicated about this movie. The illness, the medical system, the legal system that gets involved sometimes. Um, and then the film itself. Because, if you ask me what's the film about, I can't say Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I
no,
can't say medical child abuse. Um, I can't just sort of like point to one thing. It's
it's
like this.
complicated.
It's complicated. Exactly. It's a cluster. it's a clusterfuck, we'll say,
Yeah.
of what happens. It's sort of like when there's a collision of rare and complex disease or invisible disease and lack of understanding and lack of knowledge, and then the failures of child protection. Um, and all those things come together in our film. So it is complicated. And I think that we are in an era where we want like, quick sound bites. We're not interested in nuance. Things are polarized. We want sort of like black or white. Um, and I just, so like and the emphasis more and more is also on what's gonna sell. So these things are reinforcing each other. This is
Hmm.
what people want, so we have to give them what they want, but they think that's what they want because that's what they're fed all the time. So I'm into nuance. I'm into challenging the assumptions. I'm into asking questions and giving respect to the viewer, that the viewer can figure it out and not spoon feed a certain ideology or point of view to the viewer. But I think right now we're in a weird period around that in the film world. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yes, I always save anything that I want to rant and rave about out for my live Tuesday shows. So that's what everything comes out. I will say this to you. This will make you happy. The first 3 minutes is what grabs your attention. So for a film festival, I don't do this 10-minute rule that they say doesn't exist, but I know it does exist. I still watch till this day the movie from the beginning to the ends, and still I want to see where it was made. I want to see the stuff in the credits. As a filmmaker, I know you can appreciate that because it's all the research that you went into to making this film happen. So when I'm telling people, and I had someone from Beijing on our show last night, when I'm telling them about things that they don't know of, I have to make sure that I'm accurate to get your word out. And I have to do it to the best of the knowledge. So when I'm taking notes like that, that's important. And I know you know that as a filmmaker, that's really, really important, isn't it?
That's great. I love that. I love hearing that.
And you will like it from this too. The first thing when I started seeing this was, oh, it's the food that they're eating. Because I know from a lot of processed food and a lot of what my female friends are going through now, a lot of it is that, you got to cut out sugar now. Oh, okay. So you used to eat bread 4 years ago. So maybe you can't have that type of bread now. Maybe you need to eat sourdough bread. Because our bodies have changed, the food processes have changed. And I know this from working on a farm. I have a ranch, and dealing with the farmers cross country, and if the soil is contaminated or not. All of these things go into what you made this film about, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's again why it's complicated,
Yes.
because we're looking at, cookie cutter answers, cookie cutter solutions for very complex issues.
All right. One last thing. What would you say to get the audience to come out support this at Slamdance? And where do you hope it ends up? What platform? Because it's complicated.
Right. Um, this is a human interest film. It's about young people. So people with children, people who care about children's welfare, and children's health should see this film. This is something that like we're looking at. It's a microcosm that we're shining the light on, but this is a much larger issue of around who gets to make the decisions for your children's lives and health.
What platform would you like it to end up on
And
if you
what
had a choice?
platform? Boy, everybody wants to be on Netflix. Um, I would just say the platform that gives the most exposure possible, or the platforms that give the most exposure possible.
Andrew, thank you so much for this wonderful film. Very informative and very educational. And it's a need to because I've never seen a film like this. And believe me, I still watch a lot of films, each year.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Brian.
Hey, it's important.
Yeah.